Chef's Life, the truth. Topic is violence. So, a bit of a maybe a strange topic to some of your listeners or some of the listeners, but for me, and I think for a lot of other professional chefs that have, I guess, been around the block, that word in association with chefs and cooking isn't that strange or weird. Um, I guess I'll try to explain it in from a few different angles, and um, I'm not trying to, I guess, grandstand or sort of put things out there in a way that would be, I guess, highly concerning. We're not sort of getting to that point. But what I guess I do want to get across is explaining maybe a slightly darker, less pleasant side of the industry that I've seen, and I guess a lot of the people that have maybe been looking at chefs and cooking, they wouldn't be so surprised that with this topic. So let's try and break it down. Let's try and put it into a few different categories, and I'll try and go through those. Um, so I guess one of them, I'd say, verbal. Um, I'd say the word verbal abuse, but I'm not always sure that I guess the violence or the aggression. Um, the head is violence, but I'm guessing to a lot of it maybe is just aggression, and I could go into that as well. Um, what we're talking about is, I guess there's some sort of verbal aggression. There is definitely some physical aggression, and that doesn't specifically have to do with person to person. It could definitely do with a person or a chef and things and equipment. There's a lot of that. So we've got sort of verbal and physical, and if we start with the verbal, like I mentioned before, it's a stressful environment. Um, if I just try and explain that in detail, the reason I guess you get to the push to the limit to be aggressive verbally, or even abusive verbally, and even physically, to either things around you or even to other people. Um, the reason is you're pushed to your limit. You are, let's take it from the bottom up. One, you're working long hours. Two, you're working antisocial hours. The actual environment you're working in is not a pleasant one for I guess for the human body. It's not optimized for comfort, really in any shape or form. What you have to do is make the best of a bad situation. So if we just look at we're going to have a separate one about the uniform, but you're standing all day, so your feet are going to hurt. You're sitting and working on often a concrete floor, with shoes that have to be right low soled. You can't be rolling over as you're walking around and causing injury and tripping. So your shoes are quite often quite thin, thin soled, or hard soled shoes. So the comfort of the shoes are there for safety mainly, and stability, and sometimes a little bit of comfort in there. So being uncomfortable, just from standing long hours and working long hours and standing on hard floors can irritate the hell out of you after a while. That in its turn then causes some leg pain and back pain as well. A lot of the lifting and turning can also then affect your comfort level. So what I'm explaining here is the level of comfort, which will then push you to your limit. Temperature, so it's both hot and cold. Quite often not really anywhere in between. Certain periods of time in the afternoon doing prep, you'll get that nice temperature, but when service starts, you're depending on the area of the kitchen you're working in, you're either maybe working in the larder, which has to be kept colder. You'll also be going in and out quite often of a walk-in chiller, so you'll be putting your whole body into a fridge basically, in and out. Even during the days you'll be working in those chillers, cleaning them, restocking stuff for a long period of time, even into freezers. So walk-in freezers, actually cleaning them, restocking them, moving stuff around, putting stuff in there, even doing work in there. I've even had to roll ice cream in a freezer, 400-500 balls of ice cream, rolling them and putting them onto trays ready, so for sort of set dinners, for plated desserts. I think we had one jacket we could share that was always hanging outside, a dirty, pretty rotten sort of jacket that was just shared by everybody that would walk into the freezer. So that's, I guess, your cold side of it. Then you've got the hot kitchen, and you're working quite often in I'd say galleyway area, which is, you've got like a small corridor. On one side of it you've got the ovens and the stovetops, and deep fryers, and sometimes steamers and ovens, say heat convector mat ovens, and then even steamers as well. So look like an oven, open it up, but it's all steam that's coming out of it. So as you open it, it's quite narrow in there, so any of the heat that's coming out of those things, as soon as you're opening them, if you're lucky you can get behind the door, but if not, you don't worry about the heat on yourself, because you're there for the speed and the quality of the food. So you sacrifice the heat coming straight on you, as long as it's not burning you to the point you can just stand it. You'll stand right in front of it and just get that door closed as fast as possible. Same with the steam as well. You've got to be a bit more careful with that, because that will actually burn you if it gets on you. So you've got that type of environment. Then the stovetops, quite often they're mostly gas, but you've definitely got some gas solid tops as well, which is a big iron, like a big iron flat table, and with rings in the middle, and underneath the big, you've got big gas rings that are heating that whole flat top. So it's like standing in front of a table, and the whole table is very, very hot. Like, think of an element at home, electric element. You turn that up full and you feel the heat from that. Basically, if the whole table is an element, that's the type of heat you can be dealing with, and that's half a meter away from you quite often. Then the heat's going between, so that heat is hitting you basically right in your pelvis area, is sort of the hottest, and then radiating up into your face, and your hands are across it the whole time. So that heat can cause more discomfort. So I'm getting into quite a bit of detail here. I'll probably narrow it down a little bit. So we've got the heat, and then the other side you've got the pass where you're actually putting the food up. You've got heat lamps, quite often bain-marie things where sauces are kept warm during service, and there's heat and steam coming from those as well. And the table you're putting things on, that's normally heated as well, because under that is where you're storing all your hot plates. So from there, you're in this hot environment, and you will also then be running back into that cold chiller periodically to restock sauces and mise en place, vegetables, meat, what needs to be grabbed from there. So you're going from a hot and cold environment quite often. That can also give you then chills down the lower of your back, which can also then give you irritations down basically into your buttocks as the sweat goes in there. It goes from hot to cold, hot to cold. You end up with chafing and horrible skin issues. You can be burning your fingers and your hands and your arms. Those arms are going into the ovens. Your arm going in there hundreds of times a night. One point you'll just actually touch the sides of it, touch the door, touch with the lower part of your arm. If you haven't rolled your sleeves down, you'll be getting burnt with splashes of oil and fat and with water and sauces. And if you're very unlucky, you'll bump into somebody bump into you, and they'll pour something hot onto you, and you may get a burn that way. So there's a whole lot of hazards, and like I said, it's not built for comfort. You are basically trying to make the best of a bad situation, which is your physical environment and workplace. Stress, so the customers are coming in, and as those stress builds, and as the tension builds and the pressure builds of getting the food out, cooked correctly and getting it right for all the individual orders, and it pushes people to their limit. So to relieve some of the stress, you can't just go and take a break. That's the thing. You're getting pushed to your limit mentally and physically, and you literally cannot get away from it. You can't walk away. There's food cooking, and it can, for seconds, you're waiting for a piece of vegetable to cook. You can't just leave for 2 minutes. Literally 2 minutes could ruin a whole table of 5 people. And because I've mentioned before the way the brigades split up, if I'm doing the vegetables, I'm doing vegetables for all of the customers. It's not like, oh, I don't have a table now, I can go and take a break. Well, it doesn't work that way, because I'm on doing something for every single table, just like the meat guy, the fish guy, the larder, the desserts. You're doing something for every single table. So there's no getting away from it. Basically, you turn it on, you work for 5 hours, and then after that you'll have your break. You're basically taking micro breaks, and it could be 1-2 minutes, where you basically just slow down, rest, but you're not really doing what you do in those minutes. You clean, you wipe your benches down, you replace some dishes or saucepans that have been done by the dishwasher. So when the stress gets to the worst and you can't take a break, but you actually need to release that valve, quite often it's verbally, swearing, cursing, talking about the food and the equipment, and if that doesn't quite release enough, you'll start taking out on the people that maybe aren't performing to the level that you want them to perform to. So basically, shit flows downhill. You give the person below you shit. You'll find something they did wrong, and you'll just point it out to try and make yourself feel better, to try and ease that, give yourself a little bit of comfort, because there ain't no comfort coming your way from anybody else. I said shit flows downhill. The person with the most stress is the person trying to control this whole organisation, and that's normally the sous chef in charge of the shift and the service for that dinner or that lunch or what it may be, or breakfast. They're barking the orders, they're asking for the stuff to be done. When it's not done correctly or at the right time, and timing's critical, they're not mixing their words. They will point out failure directly, quickly, with an added bit of harshness to try and make you understand that you have fucked up and don't do it again. Relieves a bit of stress for him, puts a bit more on you. When that puts it on you, you've got to get rid of your lot. You can't talk back to him because it's a hierarchy. If you've got a commie or a demi-chef de partie or whatever it is, you put the pressure back onto them and give them a few words. Sous chef will see this. Sous chef knows it. Sous chef won't do anything about it. He just knows that's the way it goes. Then the lower ones will do the next one to the ones below them, and the way it goes. Where it stops is the dishwasher. It's basically an unwritten rule that you do not put that aggression or violence onto your dishwasher. Your dishwasher is basically sacred. He's like the goalie in an ice hockey match. Anybody goes at him, and then the whole team will defend him, basically. I've seen apprentices and the people at the lower end of the kitchen make that mistake, and pay for it. Our dishwashers are the people that will get us out of the shit, will help relieve some of that stress by making our lives easier, will give us the clean equipment at the right time when we need it. They'll anticipate what we need and see what we are doing. If you've got the right rapport and you respect them and they respect you, if you don't, they can make your life hell. They won't give you the right stuff. They will clean it, but they won't bring it to you. They may leave it a little bit wet when you actually need it dry. The size of the saucepan or fry pan that you need, they won't put it in the easy way for you to get. They'll put it at the bottom or at the back of somewhere else. They can make your life utter hell without actually saying a word to you. So this aggression and this verbal abuse, quite ironically, you think the chefs can't control themselves. They'll have a go at each other, they'll have a go at the waitresses, the waiters, but the dishwasher, then you realise there is some self-control in these guys, because that's the person that can more or less hurt them the most that they've got. Yeah, not much control over, because there's normally one or two of them, depending on the kitchen, the size of the kitchen. There'll be more. Not to say that, like I said, the equipment goes flying. Equipment can get beaten, walls can get punched, pots can get thrown across the floor and slid into walls. That's normally a bit of a no-no, because some of those walls can be dented, but I've seen many a dented wall. What else? Wooden spoons, cracking them over a pot, breaking a wooden spoon isn't really the end of the world. Doing it with a metal spoon or something like that, ladle, that's your equipment that you need, and also harder to explain. Well, it's not really that easy to explain a broken wooden spoon either, but if we get to the point where I said physical abuse or violence, seen a few altercations, normally just pushing and shoving, things like that. Have heard about worse. I've seen people cause difficulty for other people, which could cause them pain. And the way to explain that's maybe with heat is normally one of those ways. Heating pans up, heating handles up. If you've got a beef with somebody and the guy on the line, then you might just walk past their stove and just turn a pot handle over it's over the open flame, or something, and then move it back. So when the guy turns around to grab it, he's actually grabbing a red hot handle which he didn't know. Things like that. Hard to prove, pretty sadistic, and all quite painful. That's normally quite a more common one. Other ways is the same with the equipment, is just making life difficult for somebody else, and making them suffer. If you don't, it's probably coming more down to a bullying culture, and you'll all see that on the TV. You've all seen certain celebrity chefs and their aggressive ways. Things you've seen on TV of a certain couple of chefs actually acting in that manner. I guess you may think it's done for TV. I've never really seen much on those programs that I think is over the top. Normally it's all to do with food and the quality of the food or the quality of the service. If you're pointing that out in a certain way, I'm not saying it's right or condoning it. I'm just saying yes, that happens. That's the way some chefs talk to other people. If you can't handle it, then leave. The old story, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, and that is so very true. I've seen, so if we're talking about violence, I guess that's also emotional violence, so bullying is rife. That's a cultural thing though. Different cultures I've worked with, French are more respectful, Germans more respectful. I would actually say the English chefs and all of those celebrity chefs you've seen acting that way, seems to be a bit of a more of a culture in from England. It's and it is. That's what I've seen. I've worked in other countries, and it's nowhere near as predominant. There's a lot more respect. I guess a lot more humane treatment as well of people. Not to say in every type of sort of chef I've worked with, and I've worked with lots from different countries, they all are working in the same uncomfortable environment, and it pushes a person to their limit, physically and mentally. I've seen other people threatened with knives. I've had knives pointed at me and waved pretty close to my face about meat prep. I've heard people talk about the time and they'd done military service and the things they had to do to other people, and if I didn't look after the meat prep in a certain way, they'd do them to me. So threats like that can be quite common. So you end up being pretty smart, street smart, as far as looking after yourself, getting what you need to do to get the job done. But I think your character core, where you came from and your background and where you've grown up, you can work and live in that environment. But I think that definitely shines through with a lot of the chefs as sort of at what level, whether you're just sort of playing the game or whether you're actually, I guess, a bit more sinister and actually enjoying it. All the chefs are gonna get pushed to their limit. I've seen some very nice people. You can tell that they're from a good background and they basically haven't got an ounce of pain in them, but they've been pushed to their utter limit and actually mentally just lost it. And it's sad to see, but in some ways other people just get some sort of pleasure in seeing some of those people actually crack. And that's in itself is, I guess, some type of sick, violent mentality or abusive mentality that if you got a softer kind of natured person that's come to the industry that wants to cook and do well and have a career, if they're not, I guess, conforming and agreeing to the way things are done, and I guess some sort of sick code of systematic abuse or aggression, then they get broken, and they'll either leave or they'll stick around and do the same to others. It is what it is. That's what the topic is. It's just one of those sides. So I've actually seen quite a few younger women find it very hard to deal in these, I guess you'd say, male-dominated environments. With this type of culture, let's say it's uncomfortable. I've seen pregnant women in the kitchen, trying to work through still work in hot kitchens while they're pregnant at the end of their pregnancy, dealing with we haven't even touched on the topics of conversation that basically have no boundaries, literally have no boundaries, and we're talking, I guess, almost all off topic, or topics that aren't normally good for any decent conversation. And we're talking, I guess, living on the fringe of, I guess, of society, bordering on certain types of behaviours that aren't, put it this way, it's not fit for the people that we're cooking for. So the people we're cooking for hopefully slightly more sophisticated types of people and educated people than I'm talking about fine dining restaurants and good restaurants, that quite often the people you're cooking for are I guess a higher higher social class and education than the people actually cooking the food. And quite often that is in a chef's environment, chef's world. It's almost like a pride thing that them and us, and you end up getting dragged into it. The more you can talk, the more extreme way you express yourself, some way there is more say it's not success, but you can move up the ranks in some ways, socially, and respect in some sick way. So I think you get the gist of what I'm getting at. But it's all about, I guess, playing the game. So I've touched on a few things, some physical violence. So never really punch ups or things like that. It's other subtle ways and threats. Also, a bit of pushing. I've heard about other things, but who really knows if it's true? Verbal abuse and aggression, definitely mental abuse, bullying culture. Probably more the mental abuse that goes on. I guess you call it emotional violence in some ways. It's part of it, but I think most of it, like I mentioned at the beginning, is a release valve. You're in an environment, a physical environment, a mental environment that is high stress, high pressure, uncomfortable environment, antisocial. You can't get away once service starts. You are stuck there physically, mentally, and you can't get a break. Literally, for how bad it gets, you can't walk away. You have to just stay there and face it. There's no give me 5 minutes to calm down. I have seen that happen. People will say walk off the line and leave the other chefs to do it. That's career suicide. If you do that, you're better to stick it out and literally fail on your feet than walk off the line and leave your guys stranded. Nobody will ever respect you again in that kitchen if you basically quit and leave your rest of the team hanging. You are a link in a chain. That is the code of the team. Like I said, the brigade was built, that Escoffier built, was we split the whole kitchen into 4 or 5 sections, and every section has to do their bit. If you don't have one person manning their post, the whole thing falls apart. You can't have a plate of food without the vegetables. The meat's done, the sauce is done, the entree's done, but the veg guy has gone home because he lost his plot and he thought it was too stressful and he was too uncomfortable and somebody was bullying him. No way. I still believe that today. You fail on your feet, or you just ask for help. Nothing is worse than if you walk off the line. You're deserting basically. Yeah, good luck trying to get a job after that. I have seen it happen, and those people that end up in that situation, it's not much fun for them. Seen some young apprentices try, and that's how they're sort of learning. So you'll maybe have a little bit of leeway with them, but they're not left in that situation. They haven't got their responsibility either. So they'll have somebody else they're looking after them that's got the ultimate responsibility. But walking off the line, you don't let the team down. You don't. You tough it out. You suffer. Somebody will bail you out if you stand your ground and basically man your post. And if you are failing, you will get attacked and screamed at, but somebody will help you because they need the food to go out. Even if you only do half of what you're meant to be doing, respect in that. And at the end of it, you'll get your head chewed off, but you'll also be given information about how to avoid that happening in the future. And they'll look out for you the next day with getting ready and make sure you are ready. Or dealing with why didn't you understand it, why did you not understand the menu, the cooking techniques, what was it, they'll teach you. If you don't desert your post and leave the team hanging. So that was my coverage on aggression and violence in kitchens, given some reasons why, some examples of what can happen, and even got to the point of there's a couple of, I guess, codes of conduct in there as well that chefs live by, good or bad. I say that's the truth from my experience. Okay, thanks for listening. Till next time.